Hello, this is Dr. Chris Fleming from the School of Humanities and Communication Arts at the University of Western Sydney. Welcome to the video overview of Week 1 of Philosophy and the Good Life. I'm just going to cover very quickly in this video, in under 10 minutes indeed, what we looked at the first week. For those of you who weren't at the seminar, either because you missed it, you were late enrolment, or you were unfortunate enough to be in the seminar that I had to miss because of illness, sorry about that, then my first message to you is don't panic. All you really need to do by next week is to have gone through the unit outline, the learning guide, and you know, if there are any questions, bring them to the seminar next week. The second thing is to have done the reading by next week. It's a short reading, it's only 15 pages long, so please have a look at that. Really what I want to do today is give you some sense of the kind of problems that we look at in the unit. And you can have a look at the PowerPoint that I used. Every week there will be a PowerPoint or lecture notes for the seminar that we have involving the topics that we cover, the concepts that are mentioned and the names. Now I list those right at the front of each week so that you have a good sense of the kinds of material that we're going to be covering. What we talked about this week, the first thing was really tried to give a characterisation of what philosophy is in the broadest possible sense. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can talk about what philosophy is in different parts of the world or how it developed, but I tried to simplify this down to the main branches. And the main branches of philosophy are epistemology, metaphysics and ethics. Epistemology asks the question, what can we know? Is it possible to know mathematical truths? Well, presumably we think we can know about maths or science, but can we know historical truths? What other kind of things are humans able to know and understand? Are there any forms of that knowledge that is more secure than other forms of knowledge, and so on? Another area of philosophy is called metaphysics, and that concerns itself with the question of what is real. So, for instance, we know that humans are biological creatures to a degree, but is that all we are? Do we have a kind of material element and a spiritual or non-material element, or are humans simply kind of meat machines? We know that, say, tables, chairs and aeroplanes exist, but what about numbers? Or what about love? Does love exist, right? Does that exist as something, or is that just a kind of idea that people talk about? So metaphysics deals with questions of what's real and what's not. The third area is ethics, and that is concerned with how we should live, the difference between right and wrong or good and evil, whether, for instance, it's okay to lie or under what circumstances one is able to lie. Is capital punishment okay? When is it right to defend oneself physically or go to war, for instance? And so that's the third area. Now, it's really the third area, ethics, that we're going to be looking at in this unit, except we're going to be starting the unit by having a look at the issues really in terms of the way a lot of ancient thinkers conceived of it, of ethics, which was in a broader context. So often they weren't asking in very specific cases, you know, what should you do in this situation, or, you know, is abortion, you know, whatever these things are, infanticide, is this legitimate ever? They were asking a much broader question of what does it mean to live a good life? Now that will involve certain kind of moral decisions, but the frame here is broader. How do I live a life that is worth living? Okay, what is it? What is it to live a good life? That is the issue as it is conceived in the broader sense, and that's really what we're going to be dealing with in this unit. When I first started philosophy at the University of New South Wales 400 years ago, we were taught very early on the etymology of the word philosophia, right? So philos meaning love, and sophia meaning wisdom, love of wisdom. But if you study philosophy in most universities in the Western world, you will not come away feeling like you've learned anything about wisdom, right? There's a sense that when I started philosophy, like if you want wisdom, you know, go and watch Star Wars and listen to Yoda or something, right? The idea was that philosophy was not where wisdom was really sought, although that was its name. Now, of course, there is a tradition in philosophy where that is one of the questions, and it's a branch of ethics, which again, and I pointed out a moment ago, is about how to live a life that is worth living. And so there is, we don't balk at the word wisdom here, we won't mention it much, but really that is part, at least, of returning philosophy to some of its original, at least in around 500 BC, what philosophy becomes then after Socrates, at least, anyway. But that was not the philosophy that initially I was familiarised with, or I became familiar with. The next thing we talked about in the seminar was the Medea, which is a play by Euripides, was written in 431 BC. And it tells of Medea's fate. She is married to Jason, and Jason leaves her at one point for another woman, and she seeks to, take her vengeance, take revenge on Jason. And she wonders how she can best do this, and she comes to the decision that the best way to do this is to kill their children, both her children and Jason's children. And now she realises this is a horrendous thing to do, and she can't do it initially, but eventually she does. She speaks immortal lines, words that would become immortal from that play, which is, "Yea, I know what bad things I go, but louder than all thought doth cry anger," which basically, translates as, I know what I'm about to do is horrible, but anger's calling the tune. Right? I'm being overwhelmed. Now, that play was dropped into a world which those kind of issues were up for discussion. So the question is, and I introduced this week a kind of debate that was going on between the Platonists and the Stoics, between followers of Plato and the Stoic philosophers. The Stoics thought that all humans were rational, and all Medea was doing was oscillating between two different reasons, giving weight to anger on the one hand, or resentment, and giving weight to love on the other hand. She was rational through the whole process. At no point was she overwhelmed by emotions or something. It's just a way of talking. The Platonists, on the other hand, said, no, that's not true. In fact, Medea is overwhelmed, that her reason becomes clouded, and essentially this kind of almost animal part of her, the emotional part of her, subdues reason and overtakes her, right? There's a fundamental distinction here, right, between the two different conceptions of what's going on. Do you account for this in terms of people make rational decisions, and even if it looks evil, they're still thinking? Or do people get overwhelmed and their reason gets kind of snuffed out by something? It's a big decision to make, right? Now, in the case of Medea, it's, this is a fictional character about deaths that never took place. But of course, the experience of all of us of resolving to do something and then not doing it, or saying you're not going to do something and doing it, you're going out to dinner with your family and you think, my brother really sets me off. If he says something, don't, just be calm. And of course he does, and you explode and you tell him he's adopted and everybody hates him. And, and then the question is, right, you ask yourself, why did that happen? How did I do that, right? And so you come to a kind of... You come to some account of explaining why you do the things you do. Now, there was no attempt this week to adjudicate in this view between the Stoics, who believe humans act rationally, and the Platonists, who believe that there's these parts of the self that overwhelm reason. But I wanted to kind of point that out. Pointed out for an example of the kind of issues that we're going to be looking at in the unit, and as a kind of taster of the relevance, I suppose, of some of the issues. Now, the one question that we didn't answer is if we don't know, we can't explain how we do what we do. The next question is, what do we do? Okay, what is? We want to open up the question of what kind of life do you want to have lived by the time you get closer to death? If you look back, or if someone writes a eulogy about you, what would you like that to sound like? And that's really just, we're not going to be morbid and talking about all of you dying, but there is a sense in which I'm going to open up the question next week. What kind of life would one live? Can you have a rational discussion about this? Hopefully we can. In any case, I'm going to leave it there. And as just as a kind of overview and a summary, I look forward to seeing you in the seminars next week. Until then, take care of yourselves and hopefully see you then.